The cold metal chains bit into the delicate blue skin of Princess Caliver's wrists. Once adorned with the royal cuffs of the Zinthari Empire, her arms now bore only the marks of captivity. She sat motionless in her cell, her once vibrant bioluminescent patterns now dimmed to a faint glow by the suppression field surrounding her. 3 months had passed since the fall of her homeworld. 3 months since the Dralaxian collective had stormed the royal palace, slaughtered her guards, and dragged her aboard their warship as their most prized trophy. The memory of her father's face as they pulled her away still haunted her dreams. "Time for inspection, royal scum," growled a harsh voice. Commander Vrex, her chief tormentor, entered the cell. His scaled face twisted into what passed for a smile among the Dralaxians. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence as he circled her containment area. "We have important visitors today. The Genetic Council is very interested in your unique abilities." He tapped the control panel, and the suppression field intensified. Caliver bit her lower lip to keep from crying out as the pressure on her mind increased. Through the transparent wall of her cell, she could see other prisoners, members of various species the Dralaxians had conquered. None received the special treatment reserved for her. None were considered valuable enough to keep alive indefinitely. The Dralaxians wanted something only she could provide: the genetic key to controlling her people's powerful telepathic abilities. "Stand up," Vrex ordered. "Let them see the might of the fallen Zinthari Empire." With as much dignity as she could muster, Caliver rose to her feet. Though her body felt weak from months of minimal nutrition and the constant drain of the suppression field, she held her head high. Her 4-fingered hands curled into fists at her sides. "I am Princess Caliver, daughter of Emperor Xorath, rightful heir to the Zinthari throne," she whispered to herself. "I will not break." The delegation that entered the prison chamber consisted of 5 Dralaxian scientists in their formal red robes. They studied her through the barrier, taking notes and speaking in hushed tones. One approached the cell and adjusted a scanning device. "Remarkable," he said. "Even with the suppression field at maximum, there are still traces of telepathic activity. The Zinthari royal bloodline is indeed powerful, which makes her genetic material all the more valuable," Vrex replied. "Once we complete the extraction process, we'll be able to create dampening fields specifically tuned to Zinthari telepathy. Their resistance forces will be helpless." Caliver closed her eyes, trying to shut out their words. The resistance still fought. That much she had gathered from overheard conversations between guards. Her people had not surrendered completely. This knowledge alone kept hope alive in her heart, though it grew fainter with each passing day. When the visitors finally left, Vrex increased the suppression field one final time, as he always did, a reminder of his power over her. The pain lanced through Caliver's mind like white-hot needles, and she collapsed to her knees. In the darkness of her cell that night, Caliver did something she hadn't attempted in weeks. She focused her mind, pushing against the suppression field with everything she had. It was like trying to scream underwater, but she persisted until a tiny thread of her consciousness broke through. She sent it outward, beyond the prison walls, beyond the fortress, into the night sky of Vexus IV, a desperate, silent call for help that consumed her remaining strength. As unconsciousness claimed her, Caliver didn't know that her telepathic cry had traveled farther than she imagined, reaching the sensors of a small ship that had just entered the planet's atmosphere, a ship piloted by a human who had no idea his life was about to change forever. Jack Harlow wiped sweat from his brow as he guided his ship, the Wanderer, through Vexus IV's turbulent atmosphere. The small vessel shuddered against the wind currents, its worn stabilizers working overtime. "Just another salvage run," he muttered to himself. "Get in, grab the abandoned tech, get out. No complications." Complications had been Jack's downfall in the Earth Defense Force. 5 years ago, he'd disobeyed direct orders during the Epsilon conflict to save a group of civilian refugees. His commanding officer had wanted to sacrifice them to complete the mission. Jack couldn't live with that. His choice saved 27 lives, but ended his military career. Now he drifted between jobs, taking whatever contracts kept fuel in his tanks and food in his storage unit. This particular job came from a private collector interested in abandoned Dralaxian communication equipment, supposedly left in the outer regions of Vexus IV. As Jack brought the Wanderer down in a sheltered canyon 10 miles from the main Dralaxian fortress, his scanner beeped with an unusual reading. What the hell? He adjusted the frequency, frowning at the display. That's not normal background radiation. The signal was faint but distinct, a pattern too regular to be natural. It resembled brainwave activity, but amplified and directed, like nothing he'd encountered before. His curiosity piqued. Jack set the ship's systems to analyze the strange energy while he prepared for his excursion. He pulled on his environmental suit, checked his weapon, and packed his salvage tools. The job came first, but afterward, he might investigate that signal. It could be valuable or dangerous. Either way, Jack had learned long ago that unusual things were rarely boring. The outer regions of Vexus IV were barren and rocky, with sparse purple vegetation that clung to the landscape like desperate hands. Jack spent 4 hours collecting the abandoned equipment from a derelict outpost. The tech was older than his buyer had claimed, but still functional. It would do. As he loaded the last components onto his hover sled, the scanner on his wrist chimed. The mysterious signal had grown stronger. Now that's interesting, he said, checking the direction. It came from the Dralaxian fortress. Common sense told him to return to his ship and leave. The Dralaxians weren't known for their hospitality toward humans, especially lone operators in their territory. But something about the signal tugged at him, almost like it was calling specifically to him. Jack changed course, steering the hover sled toward a ridge overlooking the fortress. He pulled out his high-powered binoculars and studied the massive structure below. Dralaxian guards patrolled the perimeter with their characteristic precision. Transport ships came and went from the main landing bay. "What are you hiding in there?" he whispered. He switched his binoculars to thermal imaging and noticed something odd. A section of the fortress showed significantly lower temperatures than the rest. Cold containment cells, perhaps. The signal seemed to originate from that area. A prison. The realization struck him suddenly. The Dralaxians were known to take high-value captives during their conquests. Someone or something inside that fortress was generating the strange energy pattern. As darkness fell, Jack made a decision that defied all his rules about self-preservation. He would infiltrate the fortress, just to look around. His military training had included stealth operations. He could get in and out without being detected. This is stupid, he told himself as he prepared his infiltration gear. Incredibly stupid. Yet he couldn't shake the feeling that someone inside needed help. It reminded him of that day on Epsilon, when he'd heard the refugees' distress call and couldn't turn away. He'd lost everything then. What more did he have to lose now? As the 3 moons of Vexus IV rose in the night sky, Jack Harlow made his way toward the fortress, guided by a signal he didn't understand from someone he'd never met. Someone whose fate would soon be intertwined with his own. The security at the Dralaxian fortress was impressive but not impenetrable. Jack had spent years learning how to slip through cracks in even the tightest defenses. He waited patiently as a supply transport arrived, then used the commotion to slip past the outer perimeter, his adaptive camouflage suit blending with the shadows. Inside, he moved carefully through service corridors, pausing whenever guard patrols passed. The mysterious signal grew stronger with each step, pulling him deeper into the fortress. Level 3 security protocols in effect. Prisoner inspection complete, announced a mechanical voice over the intercom. Jack checked his wrist scanner. The signal was coming from the level below him, the cold section he had spotted from outside. He found a maintenance shaft and descended, the air growing noticeably chiller around him. The prison level was dimly lit, with force fields shimmering across cell entrances. Jack moved silently along the corridor, glancing quickly into each cell. Most contained alien species he recognized: Traxians, Valdari, even a Cadnian merchant. All were victims of the Dralaxian expansion. At the end of the corridor stood a separate chamber with additional security measures. A guard stood watching a control panel, monitoring the readouts with bored attention. Jack waited until the guard stepped away to respond to a call from another section, then slipped inside. The chamber contained only one cell, larger than the others. Inside, a slender figure sat motionless on a simple bench. Even in the dim light, Jack could see her blue skin had an unnatural pallor. Delicate patterns that should have glowed brightly were barely visible beneath her skin. Four-fingered hands were bound by energy restraints. Her head was bowed, long silver hair falling forward to hide her face. Jack knew instantly what he was seeing. As in theory, he had heard stories about this elusive, telepathic species, but had never encountered one. The Dralaxians had conquered their homeworld months ago, if rumors were to be believed. As if sensing his presence, the prisoner suddenly looked up. Her eyes, large, luminous, and deep violet, fixed directly on him despite his camouflage. Jack felt a strange sensation, like fingers gently brushing against his mind. Asterisk human, you hear me. Asterisk, the voice in his head was weak but clear. Jack froze, unsure if he was imagining things. He had never experienced telepathic communication before. Asterisk, please, if you hear my thoughts, give some sin asterisk. Cautiously, Jack deactivated his camouflage just enough to reveal himself. The Zinthari's eyes widened. Asterisk, impossible. The suppression field should prevent this. You should not be able to receive my thoughts asterisk. I don't understand it either, Jack whispered, moving closer to the cell. Who are you? Asterisk, I am Princess Caliver of the Zinthari Empire asterisk. Despite her weakened state, dignity radiated from her. Asterisk, me world has fallen. The Dralaxians keep me alive to extract genetic information that would help them control my people's telepathic abilities asterisk. Jack glanced nervously at the door. I shouldn't be here. I was just investigating a strange signal. Asterisk, that was my call. I've been sending it for months, hoping someone might detect it. Asterisk, her mental voice grew stronger with hope. Asterisk, the guards will return soon. They cannot find you here asterisk. What do you want from me? Jack asked, though he already suspected the answer. Asterisk, freedom. Not just for me, but eventually for my people. The Dralaxians plan to extract my genetic material within days. If they succeed, the Zinthari will become slaves in mind, as well as body asterisk. Footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. Jack quickly reactivated his full camouflage. Asterisk, human, what is your name? Asterisk, her question came urgently. Jack Harlow, he whispered. Asterisk, Jack Harlow, I sense goodness in you. If you help me escape, I can offer you. Asterisk. Don't make promises you can't keep, princess, Jack interrupted. I need to go before they find me. Asterisk, will you return? Asterisk. The question held both hope and desperation. Jack hesitated. Getting involved had cost him everything once before. Yet something about her called to him. Perhaps it was her dignity despite her circumstances, or maybe the strange connection they seemed to share. I'll try, he finally said, already moving toward the exit. But I'm not promising anything. As he slipped away, Jack could still feel her presence in his mind. A gentle touch filled with both gratitude and fear. It stayed with him long after he had left the fortress and returned to his ship, where he sat staring at the fortress in the distance, knowing he had a decision to make that would change his life forever. Jack hadn't slept since his encounter with the Zinthari princess. For 3 days, he studied the fortress from various positions, documenting guard rotations and security protocols. The rational part of his mind screamed at him to leave Vexus IV immediately. The princess wasn't his problem. He had already risked too much. Yet he couldn't forget those violet eyes, or the feeling of her presence in his mind. On the 4th day, Jack made contact with the only person he trusted on this side of the galaxy. Olivia Martinez operated a communications hub on the trading station orbiting Vexus IV. They had worked together on 2 previous salvage operations. You want to do what? Olivia's holographic image stared at him in disbelief. Break into a Dralaxian high-security prison. Are you insane? Probably, Jack admitted, running a hand through his disheveled hair. But you didn't see her live. They're treating her like a lab specimen, not a person. Olivia's expression softened. This is about Epsilon, isn't it? You're still trying to save everyone. Jack looked away. This is different. No, it's not. You hear someone needs help, and you can't walk away. She sighed. What do you need from me? Access to their communication systems. If you can create a distraction, maybe a false alarm in another sector, I might be able to reach her. Olivia typed something on her console. Their security has layered encryption, but there's a vulnerability in how they handle external communications. She looked up at him. I can probably trigger a system reset that would disable the security fields for about 3 minutes. After that, you're on your own. 3 minutes is all I need to reach her, Jack said. And then what? You can't exactly walk her out the front door. And even if you somehow get her out, the Dralaxians will hunt you both across the galaxy. Jack smiled grimly. One problem at a time. Live. 2 days later, Jack returned to the fortress with better equipment and something resembling a plan. He carried a small electromagnetic disruptor that might temporarily disable the princess's restraints, plus basic medical supplies. She had looked weak during their first meeting. As he approached the outer perimeter, his communicator vibrated with Olivia's signal. I'm in position, he whispered. This is suicide, Olivia replied. But system infiltration is complete. On your mark. Jack took a deep breath. Do it. Alarms blared across the fortress complex. Red emergency lights flashed as Olivia's program reported a catastrophic cooling system failure in the weapons storage area, on the opposite side from the prison. Jack moved quickly as guards rushed toward the false emergency. He reached the prison level and found it nearly deserted. Only one guard remained, looking anxiously toward the commotion elsewhere. Jack stunned him with a quick shot from his paralyzer. Princess, he called as he reached her cell. The security field was offline, just as Olivia had promised. Kaliver looked up, surprise and hope lighting her face. You returned, her mental voice was stronger this time, touching his mind like a cool breeze. Let's get these restraints off you. Jack activated the disruptor. The energy cuffs flickered and died. Kaliver stood shakily. Without the restraints, her natural bioluminescence began to glow more brightly, patterns of light flowing across her blue skin. My strength will return quickly now, but I cannot run fast yet, I'll help you. Jack supported her with one arm around her waist. Can you tell me anything about your people that might help us? Anything the Dralaxians don't know? Kaliver hesitated. There is much I haven't shared with my captors. The Zinthari are peacekeepers among the stars. For millennia, we have used our telepathic abilities to maintain diplomatic relations between warring species. If the Dralaxians control these abilities, they'd have unprecedented power, Jack finished for her. Yes, they could manipulate entire civilizations, create conflict, or force peace as they wish. The implications chilled Jack. This wasn't just about saving one prisoner. It was about preventing a shift in power that could affect the entire galaxy. Time to go, princess. My friend's distraction won't last much longer. As they moved toward the exit, Kaliver placed her four-fingered hand on Jack's arm. Why are you helping me? Jack Harlow. Jack thought about Epsilon, about the faces of those he'd saved, and the career he'd lost. Let's just say I have a habit of making bad decisions for the right reasons. The princess's mental laughter was like silver bells in his mind. Then let us make this bad decision together. Nothing had gone according to plan. Olivia's hack into the Dralaxian system had triggered additional security protocols instead of disabling them. Now alarms wailed throughout the fortress, and the heavy thud of armored guards echoed down the corridors. "This way," Jack whispered, supporting Caliver as they moved through a narrow maintenance passage. The princess was regaining strength with each passing minute, but months of captivity had taken their toll. Her breathing was labored, and though her bioluminescent patterns glowed brighter than before, they still flickered with fatigue. Asterisk, they have locked down all main exits. Asterisk, Caliver communicated telepathically. Asterisk, they will expect us to head for the landing platforms. Asterisk, which is exactly why we're not going that way. Jack checked his scanner. There's a waste disposal chute 3 levels down. It leads outside the perimeter wall. A sudden burst of weapons fire tore through the metal wall beside them. Jack pushed Caliver behind a support beam as 3 Dralaxian guards appeared at the corridor junction. The prisoner is escaping. Section 5. One of them shouted into his communicator. Jack fired his blaster, hitting the lead guard in the shoulder. The second guard took aim, but Jack was faster, stunning him with a well-placed shot. The third guard, however, managed to fire before Jack could adjust his aim. Jack felt searing pain as the energy bolt grazed his side. He stumbled, nearly dropping his weapon. The guard moved forward for a clean kill shot. Before the Dralaxian could fire again, he suddenly clutched his head and crumpled to the floor. Caliver stood with her arm extended, fingers splayed, her eyes glowing with intense violet light. Asterisk, my abilities are returning. Asterisk, she explained, helping Jack regain his balance. Asterisk, but I cannot maintain such attacks for long yet. Asterisk. That's impressive, Jack managed through gritted teeth, pressing his hand against his wounded side. Let's keep moving before more show up. They descended through emergency ladders, avoiding the main lifts where guards would be waiting. Jack's wound burned with each movement, but he pushed through the pain. The waste disposal level was dark and reeked of chemicals that made his eyes water. Almost there, he whispered, checking his scanner again. The chute should be just around this corner. As they turned the corner, 5 more guards appeared, weapons raised. Jack dove for cover, pulling Caliver down with him as energy bolts exploded against the wall behind them. He returned fire, but his injured side hampered his aim. "We're trapped," he said, checking his blaster's charge. "I'm almost out of power." Caliver placed her hand on his injured side. Asterisk, still. Asterisk. A warm sensation spread from her touch. Jack watched in amazement as her fingertips glowed with bright blue light. The pain in his side diminished, replaced by a pleasant tingling. Asterisk, a healing touch is rare even among my people. Asterisk, she explained. Asterisk cannot fully heal you, but this will help you fight. Asterisk. The wound hadn't closed completely, but the bleeding had stopped. Jack felt new strength flowing through his limbs. "When were you planning to mention this particular ability?" he asked, managing a smile despite their dire situation. Asterisk, there are many things about the Zintheri you do not know yet. Jack Harlow. Asterisk. With renewed energy, Jack grabbed a canister from his belt, his last explosive charge. He hurled it toward the guard's position and fired at it midair. The resulting explosion sent the Dralaxians flying backward in a cloud of smoke and debris. Now, Jack grabbed Caliver's hand, and they ran through the chaos toward the waste disposal chute. The princess hesitated at the edge, peering down into the dark, foul-smelling tunnel. Asterisk, this leads outside. Asterisk. Eventually, it won't be a pleasant trip. Jack checked behind them. More guards would arrive any second. Trust me. Caliver's violet eyes met his. Asterisk's. Asterisk. Together they jumped into the chute as energy bolts scorched the air where they had stood. They slid through darkness, the stench of waste materials choking them, until finally they emerged in a collection pool outside the fortress walls. Covered in filth but alive, they crawled onto the rocky ground. Jack pointed toward a ridge in the distance. The Wanderer is hidden just beyond that rise. If we can reach it. More alarms blared from the fortress. Searchlights swept the perimeter. "Run," Jack said. And together they did, two unlikely allies racing toward a ship and a freedom neither was certain they would reach. The Wanderer burst through Vexus Ivy's atmosphere, engines straining as Jack pushed the small ship to its limits. Behind them, 3 Dralaxian pursuit vessels fired relentlessly, their energy weapons lighting up the darkness of space. "Hold on," Jack called to Calaver as he executed a sharp turn, narrowly avoiding a blast that would have crippled their engines. The princess gripped her seat, her violet eyes wide but determined. She had cleaned the waste residue from her blue skin, and her silver hair now flowed freely down her back. With each passing hour away from the suppression field, her natural bioluminescence grew stronger, pulsing with her emotions. "Can this vessel outrun them?" she asked aloud, having switched to verbal communication now that they were in close quarters. Jack's hands flew across the controls. "Not in a straight race, but I know a few tricks they don't." He pulled the ship into a steep dive toward an asteroid belt that circled the nearby moon. The Dralaxian ships followed, firing continuously. One shot grazed the Wanderer's hull, causing the lights to flicker. "Secondary power systems engaged," Jack muttered. "Come on, old girl, just a little farther." They weaved through the asteroids, using the larger rocks as shields. One Dralaxian ship miscalculated, clipping an asteroid and spinning out of control. The other 2 continued their pursuit with mechanical precision. Calaver placed her hand on the ship's console, her bioluminescent patterns pulsing rapidly. "I sense a patrol ship ahead. They have set a trap." Jack checked his scanners. Nothing appeared, but he had learned to trust the princess's abilities. He changed course immediately, diving beneath the plane of the asteroid belt. Seconds later, a massive Dralaxian cruiser appeared where they would have been. "How did you know?" Jack asked, impressed. "Zinthari can sense the electrical patterns of nearby ships," she explained. "The larger the vessel, the stronger its signature." Jack grinned. "That's a handy trick." When they finally cleared the asteroid field, Jack activated the jump drive, and the stars stretched into lines around them as they entered hyperspace. "We've lost them for now," he said, slumping back in his chair. The wound in his side, partially healed by Calaver's touch, still throbbed painfully. "But they'll track us. The Dralaxians never give up on high-value targets." Calaver nodded solemnly. "I am worth an entire world to them. With my genetic material, they could control my people for generations." Jack studied the star chart on his console. "We need somewhere to hide while we figure out our next move. Somewhere they wouldn't expect." "What about your human territories? Would your government offer protection?" Jack laughed without humor. "The Earth Alliance and I aren't exactly on friendly terms. They don't take kindly to soldiers who disobey orders, even for the right reasons." The princess watched him curiously, her head tilted slightly. "You saved innocent lives, yet they punished you. Military logic isn't always concerned with what's right." Jack plotted a course for Nexus Station, a frontier outpost where questions weren't asked as long as you had credits to spend. "Besides, I'm not sure the Alliance would risk war with the Dralaxian Collective just for one alien princess." "Then why did you?" Calaver asked softly. "Risk everything for one alien princess." Jack paused, considering the question. He remembered the moment their minds had first connected, the dignified strength he'd sensed despite her terrible circumstances. "I guess I've always had a problem with seeing people in cages," he finally said. 3 days later, the Wanderer limped toward Nexus Station, damage from their escape taking its toll on the aging ship. They had narrowly avoided 2 more Dralaxian patrols and a bounty hunter vessel that had picked up their trail. "The Dralaxians have posted a reward for our capture," Calaver said, studying the station's information feed. 5 million credits, dead or alive." Jack whistled. "That's enough to buy a small moon. We'll need to watch our backs." As they docked at the station, a private message appeared on Jack's console. It was from an unknown sender, encrypted with an old Earth Alliance diplomatic code. "I know who you're carrying. The message read, "If you want to keep her safe, and possibly save her people, meet me at the rusty airlock. Level 3, 20 o'clock hours. Come alone. Diaz." Jack showed the message to Culliver. Could be a trap. The princess closed her eyes briefly, her bioluminescent patterns shifting to a deep indigo. "I sense no deception, but much fear. Whoever sent this is taking a great risk." Jack checked his blaster. "Well, princess, shall we see what our mysterious friend has to offer? It's not like we have many other options." Culliver placed her four-fingered hand on his arm, her touch warm and reassuring. "Together, Jack Harlow. Whatever awaits us, we face it together." The rusty airlock turned out to be a dimly lit bar in one of Nexus Station's shadier sections. Jack entered first, his hand resting on his concealed blaster. Culliver followed, her luminescent patterns dimmed to avoid attention, a hood pulled low over her distinctive features. In the back corner sat a middle-aged human man with graying hair and tired eyes. He nodded slightly when he saw them, gesturing to the empty seats at his table. "Devin Scott." He introduced himself in a low voice as they sat down. "Former Earth Alliance diplomat." "Former," Jack questioned, keeping his body positioned to shield Culliver. "Let's just say I disagreed with some recent policy decisions." Scott's eyes shifted to Culliver. "Your Highness, it's an honor. The Zinthari delegation visited Earth during peace talks 5 years ago. I never thought I'd meet royalty in a place like this." "How did you find us?" Jack demanded. "I monitored Dralaxian communications. When they issued the bounty for a human traveling with a Zinthari royal, I hoped it might be Princess Culliver." Scott leaned forward. "Your people still fight, Your Highness. The resistance grows stronger each day." Hope flashed across Culliver's face, her patterns brightening briefly before she controlled them again. "My people live." "They do, but they need their princess." Scott slid a data chip across the table. "I have contacts in the Earth Alliance who disagree with our official neutrality regarding the Dralaxian conquests. If you can reach Alliance space, they're prepared to grant you asylum and potentially offer military support." Jack picked up the chip skeptically. "The Alliance won't risk war with the Dralaxians." "They might," Scott countered, "if they understand what's really at stake." He looked at Culliver. "The Zinthari have maintained peace in that sector for centuries. Without them, we're looking at conflicts that could spread to Earth territories." Before they could discuss further, Culliver suddenly stiffened. "Dralaxians," she whispered. "3 of them just entered the bar." Jack glanced toward the entrance. 3 tall figures in civilian clothes stood scanning the room, their 4 eyes unmistakable even in the dim light. "Back exit," Scott said, standing casually. "I'll create a distraction." They moved quickly toward the kitchen area. Behind them, glasses shattered as Scott apparently started a bar fight that rapidly engulfed the front room. Outside, they raced through the station's maintenance corridors, eventually reaching a small private docking bay where the Wanderer waited. "We've been compromised," Jack said as they boarded. "We need to leave now." The journey to Earth Alliance space would be the most dangerous yet, with a damaged ship and bounty hunters everywhere. Their chances seemed slim. They would need to cross a notorious region known as the Scarlet Nebula, a treacherous cloud of ionized gas that disrupted navigation systems and shields. "No one would expect us to take that route," Jack explained as he plotted the course. "It's practically suicide." Culliver placed her hand on his shoulder. "I trust you, Jack Harlow." The nebula lived up to its deadly reputation. Red gases swirled around the Wanderer, systems failing one after another. Jack piloted manually, relying on instinct while Culliver used her telepathic abilities to sense dangerous energy patterns ahead. When they finally emerged from the nebula's crimson clouds, the Earth Alliance Border Patrol was waiting. Using Scott's diplomatic codes, they requested emergency asylum. Hours later, Culliver stood before the Alliance Council, her royal dignity fully restored. As she shared her mind with the council members, allowing them to experience the Dralaxian atrocities firsthand, Jack watched with pride from the sidelines. The council votes unanimously to grant asylum to Princess Kelliver of the Zinthari Empire, announced the chairwoman. Furthermore, we pledge military support to liberate the Zinthari homeworld and establish a permanent alliance between our peoples. Later, as they prepared for the liberation mission, Kelliver approached Jack on the observation deck. Earth shone blue and beautiful below them. "My people have a saying," she said, standing beside him. "When darkness seems complete, look for the one who brings light." "I'm no hero, Princess," Jack replied. "Just a guy who couldn't walk away." Kelliver took his hand in hers, their fingers, 5 and 4, intertwining naturally. "You freed me from chains, Jack Harlow, but you gave me something far more precious than freedom. You gave me hope." As the Alliance flagship prepared to depart for Zinthari space, Jack realized he had finally found something worth fighting for, not just a princess or a cause, but a future where the barriers between species mattered less than the connections they could forge together. The man who had once lost everything for saving lives was now helping save an entire civilization, and for the first time in years, Jack Harlow felt truly free.